I'm going to quickly say that Jeff and I worked at the same organization. I heard about Jeff while I was at Deloitte. We crossed paths. I got on his podcast and then I thought, oh my God, if anyone should learn from anyone, it should be me and my entire following. Learned about Jeff's amazing book, Organizing Agility. And I know that a lot of you have a lot of questions because it seems that Agile is getting a little bit of, I will say, a jaded rep.
Yes.
um, People are giving up on it. The enthusiasm is gone. All of my wonderful folks who are so passionate about Agile are wondering, some of them are wondering, should I continue this path? Is it even worth it? But I really love it. So what should I do? We're going to talk about that. And we also have questions from the audience around how to be successful in engagements, which I am sure that you're going to be able to answer. But
Awesome.
but the first thing that I want to lead with that everyone is curious about is your story, Jeff. You have an incredible story. You shared with me a little bit. You did not have the traditional trajectory of most agile practitioners with the certifications, with the degree.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, happy to. So I got into Agile because I was a software developer who had found my passion around software development after a couple of years in my career. I really liked the craft. I was one of those people that would go onto forums and get into arguments about object orientation. I just super huge geek, which I still am. The reason I loved Agile is because of how it took the friction away from the developer experience. That was my first reason to love it. The testing, the integration, the most of the people who were agilists at the time really loved the craft of software engineering, and so there's a lot to learn from that group on how to be a really good software craftsman. Then I was going through my career. I joined Deloitte, and the good thing about being in Deloitte is I learned what it meant to actually have some kind of business sense. What does it mean to help an organization improve their structure? What does it mean to do change management? What I didn't even know what a strategy was before I went into, like, I knew what strategy was, but oh, that's what strategy means, kind of thing. So
It feels like a
yeah,
scary word. A
yeah,
lot of my
yeah,
clients say, oh my God, I have imposter syndrome whenever I hear the word strategy. I'm not really a product manager. I'm not really an agile coach because I don't use frameworks or
yeah,
strategies.
yeah. Well, wait, the funny thing is I found all of this incredibly intimidating. Um, and people would say, "Oh, you're going to walk into a project where you're the person that doesn't know anything, and you've got to fake it till you make it." And I was like, "Yikes! I don't want to do any of this stuff."
No, you're an
Um,
authentic person.
well, yeah, and I was a developer. I just wanted to write code, type of thing. And but I had a few really good mentors that really just taught me how to think. What is the art of consulting? I don't mean the cynical, like, all the fake stuff, but just how to break down a problem, how to listen to people, how to come up with a solution, and if it doesn't work, come up with something else. And as I was learning more about what it means to do strategy, what it means to do, kind of larger programs, what it means to be a consultant, as I was maturing, Agile's maturing at the same time on its own in the organization. So um, it was getting into things like lean startup. It was getting into things like lean and kanban and all these other things that were helping. So as I kind of got past the I want to be 2 to 3 people on a team and help out at that scale, the I'll call it the agile verse, because it's not really about agile, it's about anything that's adjacent to it. It started maturing to in two directions. In one direction, it was these big heavy frameworks and stuff that I'm not particularly a fan of. And then the other direction, it was new bodies of knowledge like DevOps, or design thinking or other things. And so I started to be able to. So what would happen is I'd get asked to help on a Deloitte engagement that really had nothing to do with technology, and I'd be like, "Oh, well, do you know that you could try?" It's like a product framework. So, a company wanted to change the way they did products, and so Deloitte would come in and say, "Well, we'll do agile at the team level, and we'll put this big waterfall product management framework on the top." And I'd be like, "Well, you could do that, or there's this great book by Eric Ries, and we could try some of that." And so usually I'd get ignored at first, but then the client would be farther along in their thinking than the consulting firm was that I was part of.
Wow.
And so they would push, and then there'd be one or two good partners at Deloitte who saw what I was saying and saw that the client liked it, and they would encourage it. So Deloitte had all of its problems and its negatives, but I was lucky enough to, at least at the beginning of my career, be introduced to people that saw that this was something different. And I would say, help me, let me stand up a practice, gave me the space I needed. And then the great thing about Deloitte is that actually the young people, they saw something different. It's people like yourselves who go, oh, this is different.
I
I don't
love
know
how you
what it
call
is.
me young, but anyway.
Yeah, young compared to me, right? It's all relative.
There are such things as Zoom filters, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Maybe I don't know what those look like, but I should probably try some of those. So then anybody who's coming in at Deloitte, I found to have such a passionate experience that it was, I think, a combination of um, the passion and the practices that I brought, and that I was able to spot people that could take to it, who thrive in it, and so I was able to build a quite fantastic team. Um, and so even as I was getting gaslit later on in my career, I felt like I was surrounded by leaders that really were good at gaslighting and really good at
Mm.
telling me what I wasn't good at.
Oh
Um,
my.
but I stuck through it because I had these really good team under me. I was doing something at a scale that no one else was. And then, at the exact right time, we parted ways, and I just started doing my own thing at Agile by Design, where I'd say, if anything, the team has gotten even stronger. Um, and that's one thing I'd love to talk about, because a lot of people will be asking what's important to like what at least do I look for when I'm trying to find a candidate. Um, and so I've been doing this on my own now with a few other partners. Some of the Deloitte crew came with me, set them up either as partners or senior practitioners, and we've been making a go at it ever since. So
That's amazing. And there are a lot of takeaways that I want to emphasize, everyone, because a lot of people who work with me or reach out to me ask me, how do I become successful as an agile coach? And a lot of times I'll tell them is you're never going to be in a perfect environment. I mean, you need to at least gauge that there is some level of psychological safety, because if there isn't at all, it's going to be impossible. You have to build some level of rapport and likability with pockets in the organization, because if you don't have that at all across the organization, if you don't have any allies, it's going to be extremely difficult. But what you just shared is, it's not like you just waited for someone to say, hey, here are your roles and responsibilities, and
right.
here's your title, and you're allowed to go and be an agile coach. You actually created that opportunity for yourself, and you constantly brought in external ideas versus relied on existing frameworks, or even relied on previous experience, and you learned on the job and experimented.
Th- There's a
That's
really
amazing.
there's a really neat concept called retroactive experience. For some, it might come as a little disingenuous, but as a consultant, at least I felt I had to do it, because the first time I put a Kanban out the door, there was not even a Kanban book. There were some videos, and I was like, I couldn't come in there and say, "Hey, this is my first Kanban." I didn't say it wasn't, but I just kind of, what I had to do was take something I'd done in the past that I knew was a problem and it had not gone well, and said, "What if I had done it with a Kanban?" And then write out the Kanban and draw it up and say, "Okay." And then you reinvent your own personal history just by using, or your own, not your history but your experience with the framework, so that you've applied it with some real expertise. And so when you're trying to be an agile coach or an agile practitioner, you're always going to be wanting to try something new. But if you just go in cold, people get frustrated. So what
Yeah.
the best thing you can do is take something you've done before where you thought it would have solved a particular problem, and then lay it all out, and then you're going to get through all these weird kinks, and learn a bunch of stuff. And then when you go in that next time and someone asks you a question, you can at least bring up that example. Well, in this example, here's what I did. And it's great because you wrote this example and you tried it. And then you can be very authentic about what you do know and what you don't know, but at least you're not coming in cold. So I had to do a lot of this retroactive experience where it just try it out on something I've done in the past, go in with a client, try it. Most of the time, people will give you all the rope in the world to kind of figure it out. So
That is such an amazing way to describe it. And it's funny because it reminds me of how I even built my entire practice. I mean, transitioning into career coaching, I never was a career coach before, but I heavily relied on my coaching experience as an agile coach and as a product leader. And I actually vividly remember that one of the tools that always was like my magic wand when it comes to the teams and visualizing what is it that we're going to do was the story mapping. And
Yeah,
now, if I have clients who are actually listening, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is where it comes from. So I till this day use this tool with my clients when it
yeah,
comes to building their resumes and recollecting what they've done. So something that we actually do is we create a story map of all of the different projects that they've worked on and some of the key takeaways or some of the
love it.
inspirational moments that
Yeah.
they've had. And when you lay it out all there visually, it helps you kind of decide, you know what, I'm not going to include this on my resume. I'm not going to talk about this in the interview, but ooh, this experience was amazing. Let me go deeper into that. And it ends up saving us a ton of time. So it's funny because it's a completely different context. We're talking building software, agile,
Yep.
teams
Yep.
versus career coaching, working with clients, individually and, in a community setting and using it for the purpose of building a resume and building interview answers. And so what you just shared here is just fabulous, and I will borrow that term with my clients.
Well, I like what you're doing because what you're actually doing is what I consider to be the first sign of agility. It's for me. We'll often tell this to our clients. They're looking to adopt agile, and I'm actually not looking for you to adopt agile. I want you to break agile. Um, and then what I mean is, and break it nicely, but like take a practice and then morph it into something that makes sense for you. And until you've done that, you haven't really increased agility because it can't happen when you just take a framework, roll it out. Hey, we've done it. It's like, no, what part of this didn't work? And how did you adapt it to your own circumstances? Then I'll know we're actually getting somewhere. And that's something I encourage everybody to think about is examples of where you've taken something. And because a lot of people, when you're going on interviews, are going to ask you what frameworks you know. We've had our coaches be in those situations. And do you know Safe well enough, or why aren't you Scrum certified, or this or that? And then um, it's okay to put that in its place. Um, Also use that as a warning sign that that might not be where you want to be, by the way.
Exactly.
And then turn the conversation and say, "Listen, I'm sorry, but I found that things get better when we take matters into our own hands. It's not about ignoring all the stuff out there, but thoughtfully taking it and shifting it to what makes sense for you. That's the only time any of this stuff works. It doesn't work out of the box, and I encourage people to have the confidence if they feel that way to say that. That's okay. And some people won't like it, and you don't want to be there anyway because if that's the first question they're asking you, it's not a
I
great place for you to make change.
I 100% agree that interviews are always a two-way street. And another thing I'd love to add to that, because I've had, scenarios where clients did not have the certifications they wanted to get the role. I remember I had a client actually who's based in the UK, and she was going into a consulting company that was so big on SAFe, and she didn't have the SAFe certification. She asked me, "Oh, should I take the certification?" And I'm like, really, you haven't gotten the job, you're going to spend that money. I said, why don't you read a book about SAFe,
Yeah,
understand the principles, and then think about whether you have applied those principles without even knowing, and tell those stories. And that usually works very well.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, I love that's another example of retroactive experience. And if someone sort of comes to you and says, "Oh, are you safe certified XYZ ABC version 2.77, whatever," you go, "Okay, well, the principles are, it's flow, it's teams, they got a couple of other things in there. Talk through them." And so that will impress the right kind of people anyway. So that's great. Love it.
1000%. Okay, well, I'm going to bring in a few questions from the crowd.
Amazing.
We are already agile. Why bother?
They basically said they are at a current state.
Yes.
But if agility is about flexibility, and at least for me, everybody has their own definition, so I'm not going to pretend I have the definition, but I'll give you mine. For me, let's just throw agile out. Big A, small a, whatever. I'm going to throw in agility. I know that's become a popular new buzzword, but agility isn't something you become. It's just an aspect of something you have. So if you're trying to have agility, you're doing it because your market and your environment's always changing. There's new
Mhm.
entrants, there's new competitors, there's new technical innovation, there's new competitors, there's all kinds of reasons why the market's changed, and agility is about the act of responding to that change, which means you have to change. You can't respond to something new without that impacting yourself. So if you say you're already agile, that means that every time there's a shift in the market, your organization is able to gracefully, it's never perfect, make the changes required to yourselves. What that means is you might have 12 agile teams doing 12 different things, and then market changes, and all of a sudden you're not organized for value anymore. Like the work's scattering across all the organizations, and you're starting to put all this bureaucracy in place to manage it. An organization that's really, responding with agility is going to form around the work, either structurally or informally. It doesn't matter. You can do it either way. And all of a sudden, that's where all the collaboration is happening. And I find a hard thing to pull off, because every 3 to 6 to 9 months, all of a sudden, you're not as agile as you thought you were, and you have to do another shift. And by the way, when you're doing that shift, it's often very management heavy at first. Eventually, it should be people doing it on their own, informed by systems of work and vision, but it shouldn't be managers telling you where to go. You should be like, let's go look at Valve, which is everyone knows who Valve is. There's enough geeks here who play video games to know who Valve is. Steam, all that kind of good stuff. Half Life. Um, People choose the teams they're on, and they can leave a team at any time. And so you get to this idea of agility is people going to where the value is and forming around it with a minimum of management intervention. And I think I don't see. I feel like that's an endless journey. Anyway, just to get there. So.
It absolutely is an endless journey, and what strikes me in in this quote is the words "why bother," which leads me to this question of managers not open to change their mindset. And I think the $1 million question that I've always tried to answer is, okay, you can't just reject every agile contract out there or every
Yeah.
organization out there. There is a level of resistance that you're going to have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so, what is your golden advice? I'm sure there it changes with every situation, but what is your go-to, or maybe like a high-level framework, when it comes to shifting that mindset, when it comes to changing that resistance?
Yeah, so that's like, especially middle management is a tough one. Um, so let me I wanted to be this as authentic as I can about this. So the first thing I'm going to say is, as a software development practitioner who has attention ADHD, I'm pretty sure I do. I'm getting diagnosed right now. The one thing that has gone up in my experience as a change agent is patience and expectations on the amount of change I'm going to make across the organization. My patience has gone up and my expectations have gone down. And that's going to probably sound kind of sad when you hear that. But what that means is that, if you come in with, I'm going to make this huge change into this organization, and all of these things are going to happen, and I can't wait. You end up being the creator of the change resistance because you're pushing change on all of these people. And a lot of people, have been conditioned to keep their head down, just get the stuff they're told to get done, be as positively upward facing as they can, and that's it. And so they're just trying to survive till the next thing. Um, so if you come into a place where you don't have the buy-in that you'd like, and you never will if you're in this space, because if you did, you wouldn't need to be there in the first place.
Exactly.
Um, Throw agile out for a second. Go to it. And by the way, I've done this the wrong way a million times. So I'm not saying this because I'm so wise. I'm saying it because I've scraped my knees so often I have scars on them. I still do this wrong sometimes because I've been asked to do it that way or because I just forget, which is, take a pause, say, like step back and say, okay, like, what problems are you facing, Mr. Manager? What is keeping you up at night? What is scaring you? Yeah, exactly. Help the managers find out what's in for them because they have problems. Like they're trying to handle complex, uncertain problems in a simplistic command and control environment, and it's not working. It never works. So they're actually solving the problem through informal structure and through knowing people and through familiarity with the people in the work and relationships. And it's not that that doesn't work, it's just very stressful. And so when you introduce things like a visual flow system or a backlog that everybody can see, or let's get everybody together every couple of weeks and or every couple of days to discuss what's going on, all things that you could say, oh, I have an agile word for that, but I'm just saying that in layman's terms, you're helping to de-stressify the situation. You're getting people on the same page and you're lowering the temperature. Some people will still be high temperature and perpetually high temperature, and that does happen. And but that's where you get into the more like, oh, I just need a leader to tell them what to do, and I go there too. But before you go there, because that doesn't lower the temperature either, try lowering the temperature first. Make people's lives easier. By the way, you can do this at the team level and at the enterprise level. So Gil Broza wrote this great book called Delivering Better Results. And he says before you get into the psychological safety and mindfulness and all the other touchy-feely stuff, which I think is fantastic. It's not as touchy-feely as you think it is. It's quite practical. He says, make sure that the work coming in matches the pace of the work coming out. Like simple stuff. Like you don't need agile to do that. You just need to say what are all the things coming out. And most teams will have most companies will be like, we have a company of 200 people. We're doing 150 things or 300 things. And how many things did you get done this year? Oh, they're all different size. Well, forget about that. Just tell me how many things you did this year. 20. Okay, so maybe you should have 20 things coming in or 40 things coming in at most, but definitely not 300. So you start getting them to create a system at that lowers the inputs and the outputs. Um, and by the way, they might say no to you. So then you say, well, how about this other approach? And you keep kind of pivoting until you run out of steam. But forget about agile for a second. Just help lower the temperature.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I was giving people an analogy. I mean, I'm not like a CEO of a big Fortune 500 organization, but starting my business and being a founder has really helped me understand the other side of the table. And I was just sharing with everyone how I have a team that sort of helps me with the strategy in terms of where to market myself, etc. And I had, a team member come to me and say, "Hey, why don't you go on YouTube?" And my first response was like, "No, we're not doing that." Right. And that's often how leaders operate. You might come up with an idea, and the first response is going to be no. And, what I was sharing with everyone was, leaders are human beings. You got to understand that. And sometimes we have fears. We are under pressure. The perception of this is going to be added work, this is going to be a waste of time. And so you need to peel all those layers by first empathizing, understanding, where is the hesitation coming from. When you start doing that and you're slowly peeling the layers, you're building that trust. And sometimes you got to start with giving them a little bit of what they want to show them that you're listening to them. Another example, I had someone who was telling me, no, don't do YouTube shorts, right? And that just upset me so much because I was being told how to operate my business as a visionary.
Yeah,
Whereas I have team members who I listen to because they have started off the bat giving me what I'm looking for, and then slowly started introducing the new
right.
ideas. So I think a lot of it is we forget that when we're working with people, it's all about human behaviors versus frameworks and systems. And let's do things a certain way. And once we bring in the relational aspect, things become a lot easier. Awesome. So, quickly going through the list of questions, someone sent me a very amazing long message with a lot of good stuff. And some of the things that she shared was she's in an agile role. One of her managers keeps saying that they have no time to do agile checkups. They're not keen on giving up facilitation roles to other members. And they're very insistent on long stand ups, as well as throwing all these administrative tasks on her plate. What is your advice to her?
And sorry, what is her role? Is she a scrum master, a coach?
I believe that she's an agile coach.
Oh, okay. And so she's working with a group that is, when I hear that and I'm peeling that back, I feel like she doesn't feel like she's able to give the insight and advice that she wants to improve things, and they're just not listening, right?
Not listening, and their concept of what an agile role should be is just completely different. Where that typical dysfunction of the agile coach is almost like an administrator
Yeah.
who books the meetings and does all these administrative tasks.
Okay. So there's the soft approach and there's the harsher approach. And I'm gonna be honest. This is why most of the people that work for me, we have more than one partner in the firm. They'll get advice from me, and then they'll get advice from the other three partners because they're all less crazy than I am. But I've gotten to where I am right now, so it might not work in the micro, but it works in the macro. I tend to be very. I try to be both helpful but also specific. So it's like, I see you want me to do these administrative tasks. Yes. I guess you don't have anybody else to do them. No. Okay, I'm happy to help you in the short term and just because you're underwater and you need to do it. But I didn't come here to do administration. I came here to do A, B, and C. I want to help this team become as high productive and performant as possible because that's where my value is to the business. My value isn't here. So if you need someone to do this, I'm happy to support until you find somebody. But if if your mindset is you're never going to find somebody to do this, I'm not the right person for you. And I think
Wow,
that's
that's
okay
great.
to say that, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with that.
you can also sort of say, hey, I think there's an alternative to this administrative approach, which is um, we're going to get the team to own it because if the team doesn't do it, then this will never go away. And I think this should go away at some point. So why don't we have the people who are actually are responsible for it come up with a way to do it? It could be a rotating role. It could be. I'm personally a fan of the rotating role the most. Everybody feels the pain, and everybody feels the urgency to create an alternative. Um, uh, and you try to bring it in from an approach of improvement as well to say, and maybe it's both conversations. And by the way, this type of administration is a real tax on anybody that does it. What's the value of it? Why are we doing it? Can we do it a different way? Um, a lot of administration ends up going into reports that nobody reads. So, what's the actual information that we want to get out of this? Who's reading it? Um, and of course, you get shut down. You say, "Well, now you've got an example of I'm here to provide advice and insight and help, but you don't want my advice and insight and help."
I agree. And I'm going to come at it from my own experience as well, from the angle of a career coach. um, you want to come into an organization with strong boundaries. If you are not establishing those boundaries early on, then you are conditioning everyone around you to expect those things from you, right? And I'm going to give you all the silliest analogy, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but I just got this little puppy. Okay. First of all, here's a little
We love the
icebreaker for
puppy.
you all. And he's been biting my hand, right? He's been biting my hand because puppy's teeth. And so what do? I have this bully stick all the time because if I have an alternative for him, he's going to stop biting my hand, right? And so you need to understand why this behavior is happening. Why do they keep giving you those administrative tasks? Can I replace that with something else? Right? So for me, right, when my team was initially saying, "Hey, can you book that meeting for us?" I tried to understand, well, why are they having trouble booking their own meetings? Like, do they not know how to book it? And so I
Yeah,
will teach them how to do it, and then I'll just say, "Hey, why don't you guys book the meeting?" Right? Like, enable them to do it right off the bat, because once you book that one meeting,
yeah.
They're always gonna expect you to
Yeah.
book it.
Well,
Just like once I give my dog my
yeah.
hand, he's just gonna keep biting it.
Like, I mean, I will I wanna temper that with, it's okay to say, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna provide a bit of a concierge service to get some credibility," but be very firm with them to say, "And by the way, this is not something that I normally do, but you know
Yes,
what? This is like we're on a first date and I'm trying to help out." But you be clear. You could do that even on a first date. "Hey, this is not like I'm not paying for everything, but hey, first date itis, let's make it specific, right?" Like,
beautiful.
and you, so you go and then when you're going in and saying, "Hey, remember that time I helped you out on a bunch of stuff? Well, don't you think I at least deserve your ear when I say
I
there's an
love it,
improvement to
using that as
happen?"
a
Yeah,
favor.
like look,
You owe me.
remember that favor I did for you? Well, now let me do you another favor, which is I'm going to
Yeah,
show you how to get something. I'm going to point out an obstacle that I think we can improve, and maybe they'll laugh because you're really you position it as them doing you a favor, but you say, "Oh, but now let me do you another favor," and you move in. So there will be situations where you've tried all what I've said and you have nowhere else to go. And I've been in those situations too. And within your economic means, within your ability to find something else, like consider other options. If you, by the way, the best people in this space are the people that can maintain, I'll call it a rebellious vision, but have a very polished and pragmatic approach and a very humble approach to it. So you engage with people and you negotiate not because you're weakening, but because you're trying to find a way to get in to help them so that you can do, like, everything has an ulterior motive of helping people. And the people that are really successful in this space and highly sought out are the people that have that ability to be like, go towards the right thing, not fall for the bureaucracy, not, kind of just get into the same systematic problems that everyone else has, but are also able to um, not be kind of like looked at as the cynic in the room and the sarcastic person. Like, approach it with a positive intent and with a positive demeanor, but you could still be firm and you'll find something else, not a problem. People, it might take a little while, but people will, the right kind of people will go, oh, they'll ask for those kinds of stories and they'll be like, wow, this is who we want, and you'll be working in the environments that you want too. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I have a hot question for you. What is your take on combining roles? Because there is a trend right now in the market where organizations will not hire, a scrum master who's dedicated to being a scrum master. They will just combine roles. Do you feel that that is aligned with best practices?
it
What is your take
completely
on it?
is. It completely is, and here's why. If you look at the most progressive organizations out there, and um, uh, they won't even have the word agile in them. You think of Bertsorg or Patagonia or all these kinds of organizations. Agile is a very foreign concept to them. But let's take Bertsorg as an example. It's a largest home healthcare provider in Northern Europe, and they are run entirely of I think their teams have 9 people, 8 people in them of nurses and home health care providers, and there's no management. Forget about managers, there's no management. So they have coaches. They have a centralized group of coaches that help with problems, but the teams are expected to self manage. And there are roles on the team, but everybody's a nurse or a home health care provider. And one person might be doing operational logistics. One person might be working more on the marketing and branding and communication. Um, yeah, I'm going to respond to that in a second. Um, they all have very specific roles, but they're allowed to change them every cadence or so, right? It's not fixed. So, um, and the teams are also allowed to self organize and choose. So I'm going to respond now to what Philip said. Thank you for saying that. Self organization is not no organization, right? You play the role, as an example, you're a scrum master on a team and it's a large team and the team is very disorganized. They're not getting the stories down before development starts. They're not writing the test cases up front. They're writing them way back. Everything's just injected. You are going to be a full-time scrum master or agile practitioner as you help them set up their flows, help them learn how to break things down into small pieces. But by the way, when you help them to break down things into small pieces, you're playing the role of a BA. You might go to the testers and say, now these need to be testable. Testers and BAs should kind of mix anyway. All of a sudden, you're a tester. A scrum master role is not an administrative role, it's a helper role. You need to go and unblock it because two teams aren't talking to each other. All of a sudden, you're playing a manager's job. Managers should be helping, uh, make sure that there are no collaboration problems between teams, right? So a scrum master, if they're doing their job effectively anyway, are playing a whole lot of different roles on the team, right? As the system starts to stabilize, you're now getting into a bit of a repetitive route where you're like facilitating the stand up, collecting the metrics. It starts to become bureaucracy. At that point, you should be like, who's doing metrics this week? I'm not doing metrics this week. I already know how to do the metrics, and the metrics are stable. Who's going to learn how to do the metrics? Who's running
Mhm.
the continuous improvement event this month? I've already run 5 of them. You go run it. You go run it. You go run it. So at that point, if a scrum master isn't naturally already playing a whole bunch of other roles, two things are happening. Like one, you're not getting close enough to the team to really know what's going on, and two, you're more of a project manager type. You're not a team member. Three, the team's not taking anything on. So there's three things actually going on. So sorry, lots to say here, but it's not about overloading you. It's about getting to the team and saying, what are all the things that need to get done for this team to be successful? And encouraging the team, not just you, to start parceling it out among the people who are not only at the best at doing it, but need to learn how to do it. Everybody needs to be T-shaped for this to be a team, right? And so you can start by being T-shaped yourself. You're still deep in Scrum and Agile and Kanban and everything else, but now you're getting wide. And for a team to really work, you have to all be T-shaped because you're not. It's kind of funny. You're not playing football. You're playing hockey, and defensemen can score, and everyone's got their position and everything they're good at. But the puck goes somewhere in a funny place, and then all of a sudden the goalie has got a shot at the other net, and he slaps it across. Or defensemen have to play offense, and offense have to play defense, and you never know what the play. You might have a play, but reality is going to hit you. So everybody has to be T-shaped in this organization, or else they're not really. You can't receive the ball if you don't know how to kick the ball. So everybody has to know a little bit about everything. You're still deep in one thing, but you got to get wide, or else you're not an effective team member.
Absolutely. I think if I were to summarize in a weird way, well, there's so many analogies that I can give, but it's very similar to how startups operate. And it's not about multitasking
No,
or executing one person executing multiple tasks at the same time. It's about you have a collection of tasks and people pick and choose what they want to work on based on what they're comfortable working on, based on what they enjoy working on, based on time constraints, based on people's availability. It really is a true concept of teamwork. Like, when I'm working with my team, in my company, there are times where I know that we're overloaded and I'll just roll up my sleeve and help with something that I don't typically,
yeah,
work on. Um, and then I would say, as expertise gets shaped, someone is going to own something and say, hey, this is my thing now, I love doing it, and so I'm going to keep doing it. But if they're sick or if something happens, it doesn't mean that someone else can't step in.
most traditional systems try to limit work by role. We will limit how much you have to do by writing it down up front. And the problem with Agile, with Scrum Masters and product owners, and some have less roles, some have more, is they're doing the same thing, just but there's less of it, but it's still there. And I think that's quite dysfunctional. You want to limit the amount of work you do by limiting the amount of work you do. Either you have a sprint cadence, or you do Kanban whip limits, work in progress limits, or you just agree that what a reasonable amount of work is for the next little while, and you parcel it out. Don't don't restrain yourself artificially by role. Restrain yourself by not having a whole lot of stuff on the go at the same time, and that's going to allow you to have the freedom to learn a bit, grow, all that kind of good stuff. And someone said, yeah,
Absolutely.
servant oriented leadership. So absolutely, yes. So
Absolutely. And it kind of aligns with answering this question, right? I mean, I'm a firm believer in finding your career sweet spot and really the dream is that you're going to be doing more of the things that you enjoy, right? But I also advocate for don't pigeon yourself into a title. Every organization is going to define, the roles and responsibilities differently. Find a container, an ideal container that you would love to, a collection of things that you would love to keep doing. And whatever the organization calls it, it doesn't matter, right?
there's one question that I wanted to answer, which it said, what are the attributes looking for a product owner? So everybody that I've hired at Agile by Design, we have about 30 Agile practitioners. Uh, we kind of say, okay, so here are the required competencies. Do you thrive in uncertainty? Like, so if I say things are going to be uncertain, ambiguous, complex, does your energy levels go up or go down instinctively? So that's something you can do just by asking them and talking them through some situations. Do you love to learn? And do you have like an innate passion because you've either been in some adjacent area, like you might have been in growth marketing, or you might have been somewhere else where you're in a product company and you just saw the product go off the rails because of unvalidated assumptions. So are you a passionate learner um, uh, who is glomming towards this because you've got this aching need to do something better? So I talked about thriving in uncertainty, passionate learning. What's your, I'll call it command presence, but what's your interpersonal charisma like? If it's you're able to relate, and by the way, charisma doesn't mean like me and I'm exploding out. It could be soft, it could be quiet, but can you gain trust? Can you gain empathy? Can you be situationally aware? Um, uh, these are all things that uh, speak to your ability to help others adapt. How do you deal with complexity? How can you take a big problem, break it down into small things? Do you have a sense of testing and learning and adapting? I think I missed one of them. There's five that I talked through, but I mentioned four. But hopefully you're getting the point that I didn't ask you where were you a product owner, where were you a scrum master. Like dirty secret, a lot of our practitioners come in with adjacent experience only, but they're the right kind of people like Nada. Nada, I need an executive coach who's going to be, and I'd be like, oh, I don't do executive coaching. Yeah, yeah, you do. You're fine. Come on, let's go. Let's go do it. Right? Like, you
Trying
know,
to coach me, Jeff,
yeah,
on my
yeah,
own life. Come on.
I know. That now you know how, and that's really. I thought I just slipped that one in there. Um, uh, that's really what it matters. So look for ways. By the way, I didn't start being able to thrive in uncertainty. I was not innately good at a whole bunch of these things, but I certainly had the passion and the learning piece down pat. So you focus on these kind of interpersonal pieces and provide stories for those interpersonal pieces and look for people that are asking those questions versus are you scrum safe dad et cetera certified. To be honest, not a single member of our organization, maybe one person has a certification squirreled away here or there, but
There
it's
you go.
90% of them don't.
There you go, everyone. When you come to me and say, "What certifications do I need to take?" There's your answer. I keep sharing this with everyone. And I love that you say story. And it sounds to me, and you're the second hiring manager who comes into my podcast in the past month who shares the same decision making criteria when you're hiring an individual. It's not about did you do those exact things and what certifications do you have and all the technicalities of how you executed on the project, but it's more around how do you deal with situations, what is your personality like, how you're going to manage these situations. And this is why I share with you all the time, tell stories, give case
Exactly.
studies. If you're not giving those case studies, it's like going to a doctor who says, I'm a great doctor
Yep.
and I operated on patients. And this is how I'm going to do your surgery. I don't want to know how you do my surgery.
there's
I
only
want to know
one there's
how
only
you
one
saved someone else's life, right?
exactly. There's only one criteria that I really tell my team when they'll because we have a lot of people now, so it's not me. They're not all going through me. Is I say if you're not more visibly excited to get out of bed tomorrow because this person's on the team, then it's a no. And so some people go, oh, they have the right skills and the right talent, but I'm like, no buts. So um, look for stuff that's going to make you excited, and your excitement will rub off on the person who's hiring to get
Absolutely.
them excited. And the hiring managers, if you're listening, like be excited about the person coming on the team because that excitement is going to matter. That's that joy of finding someone new to work with is going to what's going to help you create an amazing team.
Yes, that is a great closing for our live today. That's a humongous takeaway. All right. So thank you so much, Jeff, for being
Thank
here with
you.
us. And everyone, this is being broadcasted to my LinkedIn. I'm bringing in another guest who was a former Google leader, and she will be sharing her story as well. And I also wanted to say is that I am also open to applications for my storytelling bootcamp. We talk a lot about sharing your story and how important it is, as you can see, and that is something that I love helping people with. And the last thing that I wanted to say is you should all check out Jeff's book.
Yay.
I'm going to share it, in the comments for you all to check it out, but it's called Organizing Toward Agility. It is an amazing book. There's a lot of great insights. There's actual scenarios, which is hard to find, out there. Frameworks that have been tested and tried. Really, really, really love it and 100% endorse it. So go get it. You're going to save your life. You're going to save yourself a lot of misery. All
Thank you so much
right,
for that.
everyone.
That was awesome.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you all soon in my next live. All right, everyone. Hope you have
Bye,
a
everyone.
wonderful day.